Hello, everyone. This is Carter. Welcome to this episode of Making It Up, the conversation series where I sit down with other writers and we kind of compare notes and I get to pick their brain and see how it was they got to where they are now. I'm always fascinated by people's publication road, right? And it's pretty different for everybody. There are some similarities. Some people have immediate success. Some people never find success, and some people are somewhere in between. And today's guest was very intriguing to talk to. Today I talked to Matthew Fitzsimmons, who is the Wall Street Journal bestselling author of the Gibson Vaughn series, and his latest book is called Constance. Thriller mystery writer like myself, but Matt was, Matt had a long journey. So, his first attempt at a novel left him kind of broken, and he's very revelatory about that. And, he really struggled with that book kind of not being what he had hoped it would be and not really going anywhere, which is something I certainly can understand. And it wasn't till later, and he'll talk about, an actual contemplation of becoming an alcoholic as just maybe that was the next thing for him to do. That during kind of that consideration that he decided to give writing another stab. And now, he's written half a dozen novels and he's done quite well for himself. So it's his story is very interesting and it's full of, honestly, a lot of pain. And I think it's very interesting because a lot of writers go through, tremendous amount of rejection and tremendous amount of self-doubt, shame even. And, Matt was very candid about, his feelings throughout the whole process. So it is nothing if not a journey, this whole writing business. So I hope you enjoy. We make a great story at the end that could have gone on a lot longer. I had to call it short because there was just so many places we could go with it, and you leave the ending to your imagination. But I hope you enjoy this conversation. This is me and Matt Fitzsimmons. Welcome. Nice to kind of formally meet you. I know your name.
Likewise.
And I know you've been very prolific, but it's nice to, it's always nice to sit down and talk to other authors and just kind of see what's up, compare notes, see what life experiences have been like, because and everyone's kind of got a different story, but everyone's got a lot of similar things as well. So when did you, just out of curiosity, so I know you write a series, but when was your first book?
I wrote a book in my 20s. I tried to write the great American novel in my 20s. Spent 4 years working on it. Waiting tables, doing the whole starving artist thing, and I got done with it and no one wanted it. It turned out to neither be great nor that especially American. And I was in my late 20s by then, and I sort of had I've really fucked up here. Yeah. My friends were finishing graduate school and getting married and buying houses, and I was waiting tables and had not. It was one of the things where I felt like I took my shot. I took my big swing at this, and I missed, and I was burnt out. I was frustrated. I was embarrassed. Yeah, because there's sort of a point at which it's like, oh, how'd your novel turn out? Right. And I was like. There's almost that like, did you even really write a novel? I was like, no, I swear, I wasn't just waiting tables for fun for 4 years.
And we're going to back up a little bit as we go through this, because I want to hear more about kind of what led up to that kind of decision. But when you describe, because everyone says that a lot, right? And I want to write the great American novel. What did that mean to you? Like, what was that a piece of literary art? Was it just a thought-provoking book? Was it a catcher in the rye? What were you thinking that meant to you?
No, I don't even know. Like, that part of me wants to go back and chat with 24-year-old myself and find out.
Probably better not to.
No, to do a deep dive into exactly what the thought process was. I had actually, I'd graduated college and gone to New York to try and pursue directing in theater. And so to spend a couple of years in New York City, I directed a few off Broadway things. I did an internship at Playwrights Horizons, which was an amazing experience. Like fresh out of college, I worked for a succession of like bigger and kind of more obnoxious Broadway producers. And at some point, I realized that I didn't want it badly enough. I didn't like the experience of it.
The passion wasn't there.
Well, I'd love, there's nothing I like more than being in a rehearsal room working on a play. Everything else was just getting kicked in the chest a lot. It was all the politics, all the grind, all the, it's a very competitive rough field, and I did not have at 23, 24, whatever it was. I was not tough enough for that game. And I was living with a playwright. I mean, this is how dumb a decision this was. So I was living in New York in the Lower East Side, and one of my roommates was a playwright, and he was writing a book. And I had the following thought, which I do not recommend to anybody, which was writing a book is like directing a play, except there aren't any actors and they can't talk back to me. So I'll just write books instead of direct plays. Having done almost no writing. And
you just wanted to control the cast.
I just wanted to control the environment. I was like, that it seemed so sensible at the time, but was so incredibly immature and without any of the requisite, like, okay, let's think this actually through. Do you know how to write a book? Do you know anything about what you're doing? And I just sort of stubborned my way through it. I had to teach myself how to write, essentially.
But why was the leap not to write plays instead of write books?
Because I had been through the process of watching a play get developed, and it is not a lot of fun because it is, again, it's a hugely collaborative affair with a lot of people. Playwrights Horizons, the theater where I did my internship right out of college, they're on 42nd Street, and what they do is they help develop playwrights, and they're generally like an off-Broadway jump, and some of their plays then go on to Broadway runs. Like they're the theater that helps playwrights work out what their plays are going to be about. And it was too much still in a world that I was like, I need to get out of this world.
So it sounds like you come from a background of, creativity, but not necessarily writing. So where did you grow up?
I'm from a little town outside of Chicago. And when I was 3, my dad was like basically had an entry-level job at a bank, Northern Trust Bank in Chicago, and his boss called him in one day and said, "Tom, we need a guy in London. You're going to London." And my dad went, "What?" And we packed up and we moved to London. I grew up in England. I went from Wheaton, Illinois to like downtown London in the 1970s. It just changed the whole course of my life. It sort of opened up a perspective and an internet, like just, I can't, I was just saying yesterday to somebody, like, those moments in your life that you had no control over that completely change everything about your life. Of that bank manager who I don't know his name, couldn't tell you a thing about him, had said, Tom Fitzsimmons isn't the guy for this job. I'm going to get Barry Goldstein and I'm going to send him instead. Had that happened, Like that was when I was 3 years old. Every single thing about my life would have gone in a different direction.
For sure. And who knows what kind of direction it would have gone in,
Right. Absolutely.
So you're in London, you're growing up in London, and do you have, specific memories of like, oh, this isn't, what I think my childhood was supposed to be, or it was just, this is all I knew.
No, this is all I knew.
Yeah.
This was all I knew. And it was an amazing place to be. It was, it was back before children were special. So, it was basically, be home by dark.
Right.
I remember, I biked all over. Yeah. If my parents had any idea where I was, what I was getting up to, when I remember being 8 years old and riding a double-decker English bus down Kensington High Street at 8 years old, hanging off that pole.
Right.
And no one said anything. No one said, hey, maybe when we're doing 30 in an old English bus, maybe the 8-year-old shouldn't be hanging off into traffic.
Right.
And no one ever said anything. You could do
you were just Oliver
anything.
Twist.
It was 100%. Like, please, sir, may I ride on the bus some more? So we were there, and there's a great English theater tradition over there called pantomime, which is of a children's theater, where it's very interactive with the audience and the kids. And there's a Peter Pan where, it's the whole, like, do you believe in fairies, and the clap, and they get the kids to clap, and it brings Tinkerbell back to life. And I think that was probably where I started to fall in love with plays and whatnot, was going to those as a kid, and just they were the best. They were great fun.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I grew up in LA, but like my parents always took me to, and my sister and me to the theater, to kind of the big productions, the Les Mis, the Phantom of the Opera, the Evitas. And that does kind of soak into your bones a little bit. Like just the spectacle of theater is so different than anything else. And it's the energy and the storytelling involved with that. And I had no idea how anyone could come up with such witty lyrics and write the music and all that kind of stuff. So obviously that had an influence on you. Do you think that influenced you? I mean, did you consider yourself a creative kid?
Yeah, I don't know whether I would have couched it in those terms. When we moved back to the States right before high school, I didn't really think of myself as a creative kid. But I got involved with theater in high school, and it sort of became my passion, my salvation. It was a place where I was safe and at home, and felt good at something at a time when I wasn't very good at much of anything. And
talk about a sensitive time to move back from England to the States right before you get into high school. Where did you move back to?
So we moved to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And it was, Washington, D.C. was a much different place. This was 1982, 83, and it was a much different city than it is now. Right. One of the jokes about Washington, D.C. is people will go, wow, D.C. has changed so much. And I'll say to them, like, when did you move here? And they'll say 2005. I'm like, no. No. If you think DC has changed a lot since 2005, you should have been back here in like 1983 when it was all farmland outside of DC. Yeah. And it was a small, sleepy political town, and there were almost no schools. And my parents packed me off to a boarding school. It was a brutal transition. They packed me off to a boarding school.
You had a British accent, I assume.
I had a British. I'd been in an all-boys English school pretty much my entire life. I was 6'1", 13 years old, about 130 pounds, awful skin, braces, English accent, and they packed me off to this like New England boarding school, and it was a brutal splashdown. Yeah. It was not. I did not totally care for the experience.
But they had a theater department.
but yeah, I got bullied really hard. I was very much an outsider. I didn't belong. It was, you remember all those 90s boarding school movies?
Oh yeah.
Those are basically my Friday the 13th. Like people are like, hey, let's go see. I'm like, no, I don't want to see Dead Poet Society. That's like, that just
Right.
I just start sweating. I'm like,
Right.
no. Let's go see like a slasher movie, a nice, innocent, like Disney slasher movie. That's much easier.
Your life was a Smith song.
Oh my God, yes. Oh yeah, the Smiths, the Cure, all of that. I was like, yes, give me. You're like, I came back one year, my hair was green, and they were like, the bullies just went, okay,
you're just making this way too easy.
You're too easy. So it was. I was bullied really hard, and then end of my freshman year. I got involved in the theater, and I basically disappeared into there, and that became my home until I got out of that place. And I literally got my diploma, and my parents were like, okay, do you want to go to the reception? I was like, no, we're getting in the car and we're leaving. And I got it. I got my paper, and it would get me far, far, far from here.
Wow. So do you have siblings or no?
I have a stepsister, and I have a blood sister. Yeah. Okay. Blood sister. Let's not call her that again. That's
the title of your next book.
Hold on a second. Let me write that down. I have a sister and a stepsister.
Okay. And so you got the diploma, and then what?
I went to college, continued doing theater, did a lot of improv. Was in an improv troupe for a bunch of years.
I mean, that's pretty. It's kind of interesting. This kid has every reason in the world to be completely introverted and never wants to see the light of day, to do something as horrifying as improv is pretty tremendous growth, I'd say. I mean, was that something that just you gravitated towards?
I was a funny kid. It's kind of sad, but there was a point at which my stepfather gave me all his old albums. Yeah. And they were these old Bob Newhart albums. Sure. And the Bill Cosby albums, which were these, it kind of breaks my heart that they've sort of been tarnished in this way, because those old 60s, 70s Bill Cosby albums, Why Is There Air, To Russell, My Brother Whom I Slept With, these amazing, To Russell, My Brother Whom I Slept With, one side of that album is just a long form story about going to bed, in his Philadelphia, tenant apartment, in the same bed with his brother, and getting in so much trouble that their father just all but beats them to death by the end of the fifth, but it was there are these master classes in storytelling, because he doesn't really have jokes and he doesn't really have punchlines. It's just, he was this very, Newhart is kind of the same way. And that was, I memorized those. I could do whole Bill Cosby. I can't anymore, but I could.
Right.
You
really shouldn't.
Really shouldn't. And it kind of breaks my heart, because it was such a formative part of, my storytelling, my sense of humor.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's funny because we have a parallel there, because I had the exact same experience with my father's albums, and I really got into comedy, and that later became, Eddie Murphy's Delirious became this is the greatest thing. I mean, how many times I played that album, right? And to this day, I'm kind of obsessed with stand-up comedy, and I love a lot of different comedians. And there is a parallel, I think, between writers and comedy, because it's about the storytelling, it's about the beats, and you can have two different people do the same routine, and if the pace isn't right, if the delivery is not right, it just is a totally different experience. And so I love actually reading about, Steve Martin's book, Born Standing Up, is
Yep.
tremendous. So
Yep.
I'm a total nerd when it comes to comedy.
Have you picked up Mel Brooks's dropped his autobiography?
Oh no.
I just saw it on Twitter that I was like, oh, got to get a hold of that. You know what would be a really fun thing to do would be to have comedians do other comedians' bits.
Yeah.
Like,
for sure.
Like full on do a specific festival. Like, okay, we're gonna have 10 comedians, like a cover album, but for
That's
comedians.
what Dane Cook was accused of.
Right, but
but on purpose.
But on purpose, and like say, okay, we're gonna have 10 of the best young comedians do, classic, Eddie Murphy routines, and have them do their own spin on them. Have them give it to it. I think that would be a really interesting. I probably stand-up comedians probably listening. That is the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. But in my heart, I said I would love to hear that and just see how that would go. Like, now I know I'm totally drawing a blank, but
yeah. I mean, and the great thing about comedy is that it just evokes so many different feelings, and it's funny when I'm writing because, and you probably get this too, like we write pretty dark shit, right? And I have for sure I have humor peppered in throughout, but not a lot. Most of my humorous writing comes in my newsletter and essays and things like that. But there's something still about the cadence that I think you can draw parallels to comedic writing, because it's almost like the tightness of it. You know how to be pithy and sparse because it's going to be more impactful when you are. And so the editing comes into a big part of that as well. But yeah, no, I've always been influenced by that.
It's interesting you say that. When I was writing my first series, I made a really hard decision that my main character would not be funny like me, because otherwise he would just sound like me. And I made this I was like, all right, he's not going to be funny. And then my friends read it and they're like, oh, that sounds just like you. I was like, God damn it. I was like, but he's not funny. He's like, oh, no, it's exactly your sense of humor. Like I'm like, God. And it's like almost like it's so much in the bone that, but I think that's the danger, is that if everyone's funny in the same way in your books.
Right. Their voices bleed.
Right.
Yeah. And I had this, so that's one of the things I hate the most, is being told that a character sounds just like me. I don't know why. I go out of my way with every book to, I usually write about places that I don't know anything about, so I discover them. I like everything kind of to be a new journey. And so I started writing from the perspective of a woman a few books ago, and that allowed me to just lose my voice altogether and really learn how to inhabit somebody else. And I'm like, I love this. This is like it, but it opened up my mind so much more. But yeah, a lot of times when I write from a male POV, it is harder for me to lose the essence of who I am completely. So you're doing improv. What is at this point in your life, what are you thinking? You're getting up to the point where you're about to write your book. You're about to have this epiphany about, I want to control my own characters. But was there a game plan back in those years?
No, I had, through high school and college, I was so singularly fixated on being in the theater, and I was going to be a director, and that was, and then maybe also do some film, and that was just the plan. And when I abandoned that plan, there was nothing, writing the book may, have been as simple as, if I don't do something creative, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Right.
Like, I don't know. And it might've been just a last gasp. I'm going to cling to this vision of myself as a creative person, that's what my life and my work is going to be. And then when I got finished with that, and I was in my late 20s, I was pretty much penniless. My friends were, and you were sort of watching your peers, my college peers, like, they were moving into like that next phase of life. And I like, okay, I'm like one of those people. I'm one of those people who, went for it. You always hear the stories of, the Chris Pratts who, they're living in a van down by the river with their buddies, and now they're the biggest movie star. But
Right.
there's so many guys, men and women in Los Angeles and in creative towns who just live in the van down by the river until
Right.
finally
That's as far as they got it with that story.
That's as fine as they get, and then they have to find something else to do. They tuck tail, they go home, they find a way to teach, they find some other avenue to cobble something together. And I was like, okay, I'm one of those people. Like I'm in a van down by the river and I got no idea what to do next.
So how much do you attribute those different types of people to luck? Is luck a huge part of it, or is it just they stuck with it, or was it a lack of talent? What do you think?
I think it's a combination of all the above. I think we like to believe that we got what we have through merit. I don't know whether this is a worldwide phenomenon. I think it's very much an American phenomenon that we believe that America is a meritocracy. And if you work hard, it's because you earned it. And if you didn't get it, it's because you got screwed. And those are the only two options. I think talent plays a role. I think hard work plays a role. But I think anyone who says, I got where I am without any luck or privilege or a boost up, is just not being honest with themselves. Like right. It circumstances plays a huge part. Like I am now, my 6th book is about to come out, and luck played a huge role in that. Yeah. I worked hard. I have some talent, but I also am very cognizant of how lucky I got on essentially my 3rd swing. I was on my last out, and
So yeah. I mean, I agree 100% with you. I think it is a combination of all of those factors. And I think there's something to be said also by knowing how much importance to put on all of it, right? And this goes with anything in life, because so when I started writing, it kind of just started in my 30s. It was a weird moment, but I just started writing, and I didn't have any illusions of I'm quitting my day job or this is what I'm going to do. But I also didn't dismiss it, so I'm like, well, I guess I'll just do this now all the time and keep my day job and just, get better and take it seriously, but also not think too much about the future of it. And it took a long time. I mean, lots of rejections, and then good things started happening. But it was also just because I'm like, this is, I would do this whether or not, I was being published, because I like writing. I like the storytelling. Right. But I think for me, like not focusing so much on the long term of it all was very helpful, because it's just now what I did with my life. And I didn't know what the consequences of that were going to be. Right. So you had this failed book. I mean, did anything ever happen with it? Did you?
No, I mean, it still sits locked up somewhere where it will never see the light of day.
It's your kryptonite that you keep.
It is. And every once in a while I'll just open the drawer, look at it, like, that needs to stay
keep
there.
you humble. So you're working enough to survive at other jobs, but what's that lucky break that comes?
So but when I stopped writing, I really stopped writing. Like, I didn't like it anymore. Right. I was sick of it. I was embarrassed of it. And I didn't do it again for years. And I worked for a period in the tech sector, which was sort of starting to blow up in the late 90s in DC. And I didn't like that either. And I did what a lot of people down in a van down by the river do. Someone said to me, you know what you'd be good at? You'd be really good at teaching. And I was like, I don't like kids. And they're like, yeah, but I think you'd be good at it. And a couple of people said that to me. And I took a job teaching high school English to 12th grade English, and wound up teaching theater and English, and became the basketball coach. It was the best job I ever had. I got to talk.
But did you have to go back and get a degree to teach?
No, this is private. This is a private school. They don't care. Like, you don't have to have anything. Like, I literally just applied for the job. I applied mid-year. I applied in October. They had lost someone, and I was literally in the want ads in the Washington Post, and was like flipping through it. And I was like, okay, like, I know I would want to teach English, probably to older kids because they're close to being grown-ups, and that's my. And literally, I'm flipping through the paper before going to work, and I saw an ad for immediate hire, 2 sections of English 12, start immediately, send your resume here. I was like, sent my resume, and I was in a classroom teaching like 9 days later, teaching a book I had not read.
So you literally went from being the student in Dead Poet Society to being the teacher in Dead Poet Society.
Kind of. And I did that for 12 years. I taught.
Oh, wow.
I taught theater. I taught high school English, and gradually doing that, I rediscovered writing.
Right.
And actually, I think teaching it made me better at it.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I started writing again in secret, I'm serious.
That's the best way to go, usually.
I told no one what was going on or why I was doing it, and and then I went through a bad breakup, and I was living with a friend, and I decided I was going to become an alcoholic. So I was in a long relationship. It ended. We owned the house. The mortgage was underwater, and I moved out, and she stayed in the house to sort of do renovations so we could try and sell it and not lose our shirts. So I wound up homeless for a year.
Wow.
In my early 40s. And I spent 4 months like sleeping in the guest bedroom of a friend of mine. And then I wound up living in a basement of a friend of my parents. And I'm like one step from Jim Rockford, like on a beach. Something like all I needed was like 3 children. I was like the classic divorced dad loser. And I decided, all right, I'm going to be an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Because
if I'm going to write, I might as well be an alcoholic.
Well, no, I hadn't started writing. I was like, alcoholism runs in my family. I'm Irish. That seems like the thing to do. I was as conscious as that. So I go out and I go to a bunch of bars and I drink a lot. And I went home. And I couldn't sleep because when I drink, my body temperature goes to roughly about 140 degrees.
Right.
And I lay there all night, and I dozed, and I woke up, and I remember putting my feet down on the floor, and I had spent $180 because it's DC, and I was in bars. It was not that's not how alcoholics roll. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a professional.
You're a
I'm
glamping alcoholic.
Yes, I'm a poser. And I put my feet down on the floor, and I'm like, okay. And I think this thought to myself, okay, I'm not going to be an alcoholic.
I can't even do this right.
I can't even do this right. And I decided, there's more to the story. But I essentially was like, I'm going to write a book. And it wasn't to get it published. It was just to have something I could control. It went in a time when my life was completely out of mine, and it filled the time. And it gave me a project, and I started writing the short drop. And at the end of the year, we sold the house, and I got a place to live, and things started to normalize. And I had about 60,000 words of it, and I showed it to a bunch of people that summer. I showed it to 10 people who I thought wouldn't BS me. And I said,
that's the key.
If you read this, would you keep reading? And they all said, yeah. So then I spent another year and a half finishing it. And it was only at that point I was like, that I sort of worked up the courage, like, all right, I'm actually gonna try this again. I told people that I had written a book again.
Right.
And they were like, oh, Matt, come on, don't. No. Pal, please come on back from the edge. And that's how I came to it was.
But that's the undeniable truth, right? Is that if you're going to write and if you want to be published, you have to show it to people. And that's such a hurdle for so many, and it stops many people just because they can't get past that hurdle. But and you probably, it was tough for you because you had a terrible experience first doing that. And so you had, the wounds were maybe not fresh, but they were there and you had to go through that again. But once you become that vulnerable, there is something very healing about that. Like, oh, I don't, care as much as I thought I would that somebody hated it or it didn't sell or, whatever it is. It's just, and it was probably I'm guessing it was very important for you not to tell anybody initially because there is a period, and I'm the same way. When I first started writing, I didn't tell anybody, not even including my wife at the time, because I was embarrassed and I knew I wasn't any good. But there's something about having it be just for you, which is, to me, is important because then there's no outside influence and the story is, whether it's good or bad, it's pure and true to yourself. And you're not thinking about, will someone like this? Will somebody hate this? And to this day, that's still how I write it. It has to be true to me. And hopefully that means it'll be decent to other people. Do you kind of go through the same process now when you're writing? Are you trying to entertain yourself more than anyone else?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I think
it's tough because you write a series, so there's different expectations there than standalones.
Well, I know, and I just wrote something that wasn't part of that series. The book that's coming out is not in that series, and I was more nervous about this book coming out than I've been since the beginning of this. I think about maybe it's the theater background, but we were talking earlier about that there's nothing really like live theater. That the relationship between the actor and the audience and the energy that it creates, and working in the theater, for me at least, I was always thinking about how is this going to interact with the audience? Mm-hmm. How is this going to affect them? What effect do I want to create? I want the audience in the palm of my hand. How do I get them there? Right. How do I get that theater absolutely quiet when I want it? How do I get that theater laughing uproariously when I want it? Like that effect on that audience relationship is so critical. So maybe I do think about, that reader, that sort of reader in my eye, like how are they going to take this? Because the interesting thing about writing thrillers is that you can't actually, I don't enjoy my books because I know what's going to happen. Like the funny thing about writing thrillers or mysteries is how it ends. So at no point in the writing of it do you have the experience of, what's going to happen? That I've never sat up and read my own book like at 2 a.m. I just got to read the last 50 pages because I know what the last page always is.
See, I never do though, so I had that experience all the time.
And I guess you do. You have little ones as you go, as you're writing it. That is true. But it is that interesting. I almost have to look to the reader to be like, was I successful in giving you the experience that I was trying to give you, because I can't have it myself.
Right. Yeah. You never have that perspective. And you finish something, and when you say finished, nothing's ever really finished until, the editor says it's finished.
Takes it away from you. Yeah.
But you've rewritten it so many times that you're kind of sick of it. And, absolutely. And you're knee deep into something else already that you're excited about. Yeah. And it is weird when you go back and maybe do a reading or talk to somebody who, pulls out a phrase that they liked, and you're like, oh, I kind of remember that. And you have to have some, for me, I have to have some time before I can have any appreciation. But I never go back and ever look at my stuff unless something's pointed out to me. I never listen to the audiobook or anything like that, because I'm just like, yeah, that story's done.
I saw an interview with Mick Jagger, and the interviewer said, so, if Rolling Stone songs come on, do you ask the limo driver to turn it up, or do you ask him to change the station? And Jagger goes, oh, turn it off. And he goes, really? Why? And he's like, because I can hear all the mistakes.
Right.
I can hear all the things that I did wrong that I can't fix.
That's
and it drives me crazy. And I think that's the same reason why, I'm starting to work on, for the series, I'm working with someone on sort of developing it for television. And I'm going to have to go back and reread, because I don't remember some of it. And I'm like, I'm terrified. It's on my nightstand. I'm like, I have to sit down and read a book of mine that I wrote 5 years ago. And I am just afraid I'm going to be mortified.
Yeah, but there's something very I believe that you have, it's so healing to just let things go, right? To acknowledge that there are 50 different possible endings that this book can have. And I don't know if this is the best ending. This is the ending that I'm doing. And it's never going to be perfect. And, in fact, when I'm asked to do a reading and it's got to be, say, 5 minutes, and I want to read a passage that takes me 10 minutes to read, but I really like the whole passage, so I edit it down. I'm like, why did I do this before? It's so much tighter and so much better. There's so many extra words here. Why, but you've done the best you could at that time and in the mindset that you were in. And then to just release that is kind of like, that's where I was then. And that's my timestamp. And now it's different. And that doesn't mean it's better or worse now, but so. It's a good way to look at it. Yeah, I try to. It's being a writer means you really shouldn't ruminate on things, because there's so much there's so many what ifs that you can go through in terms of your career, that if you just stayed in that place, you would never move forward. And there's so much rejection. And I just think you have to do it because you really enjoy the process and for sure the art of it, and hope the money comes in at some point, which is not a guarantee.
No, certainly not. By now, yeah.
Well, we're going to test your improv skills. We're going to test my improv skills. I have to do this every time, so it's really scary to me. But it's always a lot of fun. And just talking about energy, it's always interesting to see when I make up a story with somebody, like, what's our energy? Sometimes I can feel they're like, oh, I know where they're going to go with this. And sometimes it's just all over the place. And sometimes it breaks all of the rules. And so it's always fun. But we can do, there's zero rules here. That's the beauty of it. But I've got 3 books I'm going to ask you to pick a sentence out of.
All right.
You choose one book to pick a sentence out of. So I have a pension book, The Crying of Lot 49.
Okay. Classic.
I don't know if you've ever read this. This is kind of an experimental book, The Raw Shark Texts. It's a rather bizarre book, but I remember just absolutely loving it. I couldn't even tell you what it was about, but I remember wow, this was a crazy good book. And then just kind of throw back just a collection of Victorian ghost stories.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I thought those were going to be easy.
Oh no. I kind of pick random books every time.
Right. Let's go with The Shark.
Okay. So give me a page between 1 and 400.
77.
And a sentence between, say, 1 and 5.
4.
Okay.
Now I'm nervous.
I'm going to actually read 3 sentences because they tie together nicely. And we'll just alternate back and forth with a sentence or two as much as you feel like it. And then after a few minutes, I'll call stop to it. There is a story. There is a story I've been avoiding. It's the story about why all this is happening.
I think to tell it best, I have to start from the beginning.
I'm going to sit down and pour myself a scotch, because only with the burn in my head and my throat can I get through this. So I'm going to ask you to sit across from me. And the only other thing I'll ask is that you don't look at me directly as I talk.
Now, you may not understand this. You're much younger than I am, but I hope in 20 years, you won't judge me as harshly as you're going to now.
I met her when I was 16, a long time ago. And she crackled in a way an electrical wire does. And I've never had anyone relate to me like that before. And I knew we were destined to always be, if not together, then joined.
Her name was Mary Ann. She traveled west. She traveled west to Los Angeles with dreams of being a singer, a runaway, a boring story when you think of it. But somehow from her, it seemed fresh and new.
We were both incredibly alone, incredibly poor, and incredibly desperate. And I wonder now if those three ingredients hadn't been there in both of us, if I would have ultimately done what I did.
And if those three things hadn't been present, I don't know if we'd have been together at all. I don't know what she saw in me then. I don't know what she saw in me now. But she kept me alive at a time when being alive was up for grabs.
This sounds like an excuse and it sounds like I'm blaming, but really the whole idea was hers. She's the one who suggested we go into the diner that day. She's the one who said she had a connection who told her where the money was inside in the kitchen. And she said it was okay to bring knives with us.
I still don't know where she got the knives. They were hunting knives. I think my family weren't campers, but they were long and scary with serrated edges. And I held mine in my lap while the waitress took our orders that we didn't have money to pay for yet.
We'd been together 5 years. I was 21 now. And who would have thought that sitting here in this booth, this is where I would have ended up. And the funny thing about all of it is when the waitress came back with our meal, she seemed to me exactly the same way my girl looked when she was 16, desperate and poor, and maybe a little bit hopeful. That's the last thing I remember, the way that waitress looked at me.
Her connection arrived. He was a busboy. His part in the plan was to let us in the back and distract the manager while we found the box that was supposedly hidden under the desk.
I'm going to call it there because I think we have a good setup.
It was about to get bloody. It was about to get dark.
I know. And I could have gone on for easily another 10 minutes with that because I wasn't quite sure where it was going, but I had a sense. But that was good. That's fun, isn't it?
It's that, that improv idea. You said there are no rules, but like one of those essential ideas.
The yes and.
Yes and don't deny and be like, well, it wasn't a diner. It was actually a shoe store. The cat. Well, now, okay. Well, now we're screwed.
Right. Right. This is the hand you're dealt.
Right.
And it's funny whenever I do it, we never purposely like try to like challenge the person.
Yeah, no.
But there's always like, I know where I'm going to go with this. And then all of a sudden they introduce something else. I'm like, oh, I can't go there. All right. My brain's got to start firing. Where do I go now? But I love that challenge of that off-roading of like, nope, this is the road just ended here. Now you got to go this way. So
they talk about that. That was nice. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that was a nice story.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. I've been thinking about that all day about doing that. I was like, do I still have the muscle memory for that kind of collaboration? And I really like that. I mean, again, that's theater. That's working with someone else. You writers have that. I know writers who they don't show their work to anyone.
Right.
I'm the opposite. Like I love input. I love like at this point, like, like, what do you think of this chapter? What do you think of this bit? Because I love hearing, bouncing ideas off of people.
Well, and you're also seasoned enough. I mean, that's the big thing. Once you're seasoned enough, you have that confidence, and you also know you have the ear for like, oh, your suggestion is fantastic versus like, no, that's not right. But because it is very easy to like get pulled in a lot of different directions if you listen to everybody. But
You're right. Listen, but then say, thank you, but no.
Right.
But that's the same way it is in the theaters when you're like trying to figure out a scene is, people are throwing things out and, or a writer's room. I've never worked in like on a television writer's room, but I think I would like that experience, that collaborative, like, all right, what are we going to do for the 9th of 10 episodes? And then people are just throwing things out. And that process of like 10 bad ideas getting you to that 11th good one.
Yeah, that's true. And when you collaborate, you tend to like, you can either destroy something or you can completely come up with something extremely original. I've co-written a couple of short stories, but that's it. Nice. I think what would be hard for me is like, because I don't outline, I love the discovery part of it is where I get my joy. And not being completely, I guess, in control of that could be challenging. But, it's also like you learn to let go. I would love to co-write with somebody at some point and just have two different points of view. And like, and even like you send me a chapter and I have to, like this story, I have to react to that and see how the story develops. And you can't outline that because you don't know what the other person's going to write. I mean, it might be terrible, but I think it would be a really interesting process to go through.
I think it just takes, you got Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett who did a bunch of collaboration. They seem to be few and far between. I think you require the right, in improv, they talk about, people who are not necessarily the funniest people in the improv, but they're the people who are absolutely essential because they see where the scene is going. And they don't, like you said, like, okay, I see where this is going and someone's going to add something in and now I can't go there.
Right. They don't get in the way of it.
That person is like, oh, I see where you're going and I'm going to help us get there. Right. As opposed to, oh, we're going to go off in this direction instead.
Right. You have to have a lot of trust, I think, to partner with somebody. I mean, I was just talking to an author who just co-wrote for the first time. And it didn't sound like it was the best experience, and she said it was harder than anything she's ever worked on, countless novels that she's written by herself. So yeah, but at some point in my career, I think that would be a fun thing to do.
Yeah. If you find the right person and the right chemistry. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, listen, buddy, it was nice talking to you and getting to know you.
Really nice talking to you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not going to see you in New Orleans, but,
hopefully a Left Coast Crime or BoucherCon in Minnesota, somewhere sometime soon. Let's have a drink. That would be really nice.
I'd love that. All right, man. Enjoy the rest of your week.
You do the same. Thanks for having me. All right.
So that was my conversation with Matthew Fitzsimmons. It was fantastic. I really had a good time talking to him. I loved the honesty. I loved the dissection of the brutality of writing and of publication and the good amount of luck that really anybody needs to make a single dollar at this business. And the idea that, passion is really where it's at. Like if you're not passionate about something, you're not going to probably ever find success at it. That doesn't mean that it's easy to do. It just means that you're passionate about it. And you could tell Matthew is really passionate about his writing. If you want to find out more about Matt, you can go to MatthewFitzsimmons.com. If you want to find out more about me or subscribe to my newsletter, which I hope you do because I work really hard at it, just go to CarterWilson.com. So that's it for this episode of Making It Up. More episodes coming out soon. In the meantime, take care, be safe.